The Symphony of Canterlot, Chapter 3, Part 2. I telekinetically took my Kurdish dagger and cut something close to that amount from the concert hall curtains, wrapped the cello in it, and then I took some rope that I found backstage and telekinetically tied it to my back. Probably it stained the red curtains with the still wet revenant blood, but I was probably leaving a trail of red hoofprints as well, though truth be told, I really wasn't sure. I then limped my way out of Concert Hall B5, and the crater that I left when I came back? Well, that was gone. And the fact that I can only guess that is what happened is that I will never be in the Philharmonic Hall back then. It seemed that I was never really in my realm to begin with, which means that I came back home as seamlessly as I left, and that now I am in the Philharmonic Hall. Believe it or not, this is actually standard for ending up in other realms. Contrary to what pulps and comics would have you believe, there never is actually a hole, or a mirror when entering another realm. You could easily end up in a different realm without so much as a passing breeze. A good 1% of disappearances are actually due to such circumstances. What makes it worse is that it can happen both naturally and intentionally through spellcraft, though throw spellcraft doesn't last more than a few seconds at most, meaning that considering my circumstances, I was being tailed by something or some pony. So there could have been some pony that was tailing me, some pony that was powerful enough to send ponies to other realms without the use of ether-electric generators, sacrifices to minor deities, or complex rituals, yet is skilled enough to hide their presence from me. Grandos, that's truly wonderful, I said in sarcasm that would make even the great Socrates blush, before massaging my left temple so that I didn't scream in frustration. I decided to continue moving. As I was limping, I remembered something. The door pony. I yelled in realization of that folly. I couldn't gallop, so I just kept limping to the janitor's closet where I left him. And then I arrived there. To my horror, the door had been reduced to splinters and was covered in what I can only say is equine blood. The pattern of the splinters and the melted remains of the brass knob indicate that the door was smashed through the outside with unimaginable speed and force, and the result is that it could be some sort of tentacle, considering that the copious blood splatter and the pattern points to him being crushed to death in less than a second. Not to mention the various broken glass pitchers, once filled with cleaning solutions, surrounded the area in the closet. So the evidence to something physical instead of ethereal crushing him is further mounted to the forefront of my mind. Oh joy, that is just grand. A most likely dead witness and evidence to spellcasting too powerful and quick to be from the average mage. That's just fan-fucking-tastic. If you didn't catch on the sarcasm, then I felt some genuine pity. My situation was getting worse, and getting back to the shop without a carriage may actually have been detrimental for my health. My condition wasn't exactly favorable for the distance that I actually had to travel back. I also noticed that the chandelier from earlier was back in its place, and the desk and the floor were in perfect condition. Truth be told, I was glad that I didn't have to clean that up. I decided to head to the lobby, and then I saw my familiar waiting for me in his equine form with that "Where the Tartars have you been? The food is getting cold" expression that you would expect from a disappointed member of your extended family after returning from drinking away your woes in the nearby pub due to your date humping away with a wealthy stallion in the very same pub because of a personal delay. Well, glad to see that you're still looking out for my well-being, Bodus, I said groggily, with the utmost disdain. That is Count Bodus to you, I responded in kind. Well, no offense, but that title has been defunct for the last 1200 years, Bodus. There's no point to it. You aren't a demon anymore. And he responded in a rather pathetic fashion. I can still have dreams. And I continued. And why didn't you warn me of this mess? He responded. I haven't had the slight of the possibilities of past and future since I was stripped of my power. You know that. I knew. I just felt like messing with him. And please, don't feel pity for him. He used to feast on virgins when he actually had an army and power. His current position by selling his services to magicians that summon him for lamb chops is a fate worse than death. And a fitting punishment if I do say so myself. Did you eat the prisoner? It was a legitimate question at the time. He responded with, I have not. Inbred unicorn tastes like mold, he said with such a flat face that one would wonder if he actually had tasted that. Probably did a few centuries ago. Though, it's not even my problem, though. He wasn't lying. He would have left already if he had done so. So, you saw what it did? I asked with incredulity. He answered with, I wasn't even here. I had to swallow a few alley cats just to heal my tail. Oh, for Star Swirl's sake, I muttered under my breath. And then he talked again. I just wanted to say that I quit. But how? That contract was solid, plenty of binding enchantments and blood oaths. As weakened as he was, he shouldn't have been able to quit. You haven't brought me that lamb from the Griffin Butcher Shop in Salt Street in a while, and that little stunt back there was costly. The contract is void, Warlock, he mentioned with certainty. Well, so much for additional support. Crap, I said, for a good measure. And with that, he disappeared without so much as a magical discharge. That itself is another thing that is disturbing to anyone who knows the laws of ethereal mechanics. Well, can't go through the front, can't use my trinket either. I'm gonna have to go through the back. It's gonna be a pain to have every pony see me covered in what they would assume is the blood of my murder victims. I spent a small while in the building, but eventually I found the back exit. With that, I headed out the door and started limping my way into the alleyway. I noticed the sound of carriages and hoofsteps around me, meaning that the city is back to normal. And considering that it was night, the time must be around 9 p.m. if there was still that many ponies trotting around. With that, I saw in front of me a black-roofed carriage being pulled by 2 Pegasus stallions wearing the usual black suit and top hat uniform. I knew that Sweetside preferred to use that carriage service, so I tried the code that we agreed on. The night is chilly. And Sweetside's feminine voice actually responded.
Luckily, I always have a coat on.
And then I heard a different feminine voice from inside the carriage.
Come on, love. Let him in already.
And then came out the same velvet red, hazel-eyed, black trench coat wearing mare that I mentioned that I saw this morning. Meet Bloody Mary. She was a former spy of the Albion Kingdom who was stationed in Canterlot to spy on Celestia. She failed, so she decided to stay in Canterlot rather than face her former superiors in Albion. They had been doing that for 150 years, to the point where being assigned the sun job, as they call it, is treated as the initiation job for their spies. Celestia had been well aware of the Albion spying on her for the last century and treats it mostly as a sad joke. She even sends reports to the ruler of Albion every time that she discovers each successive spy, telling them how their spy did and that the king or queen owes her a shipment of black tea as collateral. Celestia has had free shipments of black tea for the last 100 years as a result.
I'm coming, hang on,
she said. Truth be told, the way she said that was adorable. She then galloped right to me and helped my trot to the carriage. Well, glad to see that you're energetic as ever, Mary, I said with a bit of slyness in my tone.
There's Folklore, covered in rotting blood and at death's door, yet still manages to be a charmer,
she said with a sing-song tone in her voice. That little bit of teasing was actually something nice to hear after what the Tartarus I'd been through. She got me into the carriage, took the rapcello, and seated me first, and then she sat next to me, lighting a cigarette and holding onto the cello as she does. I then closed the door telekinetically, and a soft punch in the roof, signaling the Pegasus pullers to start flying. In front of us was a blonde, cream-colored earthen mare, Sweetside, wearing a light blue evening gown and a feathered hat. Rather fancy for the occasion, but she must have been leaving town after he dropped us off.
Folklore, no offense, but you look like shit,
Sweetside said without the slightest hint of irony. Well, a fact that hasn't escaped my aching muscles, bones, and head, Sweets, I said with certain clarity.
You're gonna have to avoid conflict for a time while you recover from whatever happened back there. Should we probably drop you off to the hospital?
Bloody Mary said with a genuinely worried tone. Well, some pony was actually concerned. That actually took me off guard. No, I'm too vulnerable there. And not to mention, my client demanded discretion, and patient-doctor confidentiality can only get you so far, I said in a factual tone.
So you are gonna avoid dying. That's a first,
said Sweets with minimal concern. Well, thank you for your esteemed approval, Sweets. Could you drop me off at my place? I'll start analyzing what Mary is holding, see what I can get a gleam from it, I said as a response.
We're already here,
Sweet said as the carriage suddenly stopped. Well, would you look at that? I said in faux surprise. Mary, being as sweet as she is, helped me down from the carriage and was now carrying the cello on her back. Sweetside then said as we approached from my door,
Do me a favor, Mary. Keep the stubborn bastard alive. He's worth nothing dead. Sure thing, love.
Mary said with a flat tone, probably hoping to get me in as soon as possible. I telekinetically gave the key to Mary, and she unlocked the door. We both got in with new purpose, and she left me to hold back the front desk as she closed the door behind us. We made it, I said in relief.
You can say that again,
responded Bloody Mary with a sense of genuine relief that I haven't heard from her in a while. Pages and Stories Bookshop, time unknown. Bloody Mary helped me get up in my spiral staircase and got me up to the front door of my bathroom. I was waiting for her to let me go, but she was just still standing there with my right forehoof. Mary, let me go. I can wash myself, I said, pointing out the obvious, or maybe not so obvious, considering my state.
What? Folklore, you're refusing the company of pretty mares now? Is there some pony that I don't know of?
She said as a retort. It is true that me and Redheart ended our relationship under mutual agreement before I left Manhattan, but I did it mostly for her safety more than anything. I still had feelings for her. Not to mention letting Mary that close to me may have been hazardous to her health. The Thule Esoteric Order, that was merciless. No, it's just that I don't think I can do much. I'm not in the best shape as of now, and you're a stalker. You probably asked Sweets for a ride when you realized that I hadn't returned by sundown to start preparing for a stakeout, I said in a nonchalant tone.
Alright, fair enough, but I want in,
she said in the most sensual tone that you could possibly imagine. Excuse me? I said with minor surprise.
You look like Tartarus, Folklore, and from that, my guess is that this is something big. I'm guessing that if I stay more than one night here, I'm bound to be a target, and I won't stay, but I'll talk to Henry and his gang, get more numbers, and arm up. You won't have to pay a single bit. And knowing Henry, whatever you are against now is something that he'll want out of his feathers.
She had a point. If this was Manhattan and a different client, I could have gotten away with it, but his gang was wanted. The branders, as the newspapers call them, are considered to be vigilantes that brand the criminals they kill with a brand of a triangle. The newspapers aren't wrong, but in the poorer districts of the city, they're the closest thing to law and order that there is. Not to mention that Henry and his gang were rather fond of me. Don't do anything yet. I'll see what I can do. Henry already has given me a sanctuary a couple of times, but constant protection would lead the problem to finding them where they live, I said.
Alright, but I'll stay here for tonight then,
Mary responded. Alright. It's the least I can do for you saving my hide. Leave before sunrise, though. Once I'm sure that I can land the final blow, I'll come to you. I finished the statement by nudging her to let me go. So she did, dropping me like a heavy sack of potatoes.
Sorry.
She naturally apologized, despite the sprinkle of sarcasm in her voice. I then got up, entered, and then I took off my overcoat. I telekinetically closed the door afterwards, and back then, I hadn't needed a shower that bad in months. C'est la vie.